like this, just us.
Starting our own church right now.
Just our own ward. I like the church. Our
This
own
is how
ward.
it happens. It's slippery slope.
That's
All
right.
of a sudden,
Yeah.
we're the Snufferites. You got to be careful.
I heard Salty Saints gets guys to join different churches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, just a different ward.
Well, I think we're live. So,
Great.
welcome back to Salty Saints. This is a special Elders Quorum Hot Take Salty Saints. We have tried to find some of the greatest minds in all of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and form a mini Elders Quorum as we go through some of the spicier comments from our previous two videos about the Elders Quorum. We are also going to be talking about Mother's Day, or as some local leaders know it, the most dreaded and stressful day in their entire church career. So let's start off with Mother's Day. Tanner, could you tee us off there with the post?
Yeah, I'll pull it up here.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay, so the post says Mother's Day is approaching, and for many local ward leaders is one of the most stressful days of the year. If they avoid speaking about motherhood, they hear about it from offended mothers. On the other hand, if they speak about motherhood, they hear about it from offended women who may want to be mothers but cannot for various reasons. Is there a way to avoid offense on Mother's Day, and if so, how? Also, do we see the same issue for men on Father's Day?
Okay, so that's the post.
That's the question.
Before we get into any of the comments, let's get some of the reactions from you guys. What are your thoughts after hearing that post? Let's start off. Sam is rubbing his fingers over there like a Disney villain. Let's start off with you, Sam.
Last Elders Quorum presidency meeting, we spent about 30 minutes talking about this exact topic.
Oh, nice.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm excited. Yeah. You're prepared.
How do we avoid offending women that aren't mothers and those who are mothers? And what we've came up with is, unless you don't want me to hold off on that.
No, go for it.
Go straight into what we did.
Just go for it.
Right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're having all the women just come to the cultural hall, or as I like to call it, the gym.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's kosher or not, but that's essentially what it is. It's
kosher.
A gym. Yeah. They're all going to the gym. No one's getting roses, right? Because we don't want to offend anybody, like giving the wrong person a rose or somebody who's not a mother a rose. But we are providing them an activity all together as women. So we're celebrating the potentiality of their gender. So the end goal is motherhood. So even the ones who aren't mothers, we're lumping them all into the same group. And really, their reward is not having to do primary that Sunday. So they get to be doing their activity all together in the cultural hall or the cultural center or the gym. It's called the gym.
Yeah,
and
a lot of
we'll
culture
be taking
happens
care
in
of
there.
primary and all of the other stuff. Yeah.
What's this activity? You're teasing, but I don't know.
Oh,
what's this activity that they're doing?
Should I just go right into it? Okay.
Yeah, go
so
for it.
Last year, as a presidency, we decided to do bingo, right? Because we have a split. We have a little bit of an older crowd, and then we also have the younger crowd. And so we did a bingo with essentially just various scriptures, and then quotes from a talk that we put on by Sherry Dew, talking about motherhood.
Nice.
And then as they went through, they would have to hit their bingo spots and then stuff like that. But this year we're doing a trivia. So we're going to have just 15 trivia questions. They're all going to be at tables in teams, and they're going to have sheets of paper. And then the questions are going to be women of the scriptures. So I actually have a couple of questions. Like a simple one would be, who was married to, and this isn't a question by any means, but who was married to Adam in the garden? And it's like the answer on the screen will be, Eve. And if they got that one right, that hopefully, then they'll get their table will get a point, right? And then we'll tally it up at the end.
Okay.
So, and in order to ensure there's some difficulty to it, we have a lot of women from the Old Testament in there, so makes it a lot more complicated.
Okay,
so that'll do it.
Yeah, big. I think that's the first time I've ever heard of a game.
We're doing food, of course.
Oh, okay, yeah. typically what I have heard is the go-to is like you pretty much all the men give the women the second hour off, the second hour off, and then the women all gather in the gym, and then they just get to eat and just kind of take it easy, and that's kind of like the go-to. Timber, what are your thoughts? I saw some chin scratching as Sam was talking.
Well, it's not really about the activity per se, but it's about like just who's overrepresented and who's underrepresented. I feel like Mother's Day can get a lot of attention, whereas like Father's Day is kind of just everyone gets some dad's root beer and that's about it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing much else to it. So I don't know. Those were just my initial thoughts.
So you're feeling underrepresented as a father in the church. Is that what I'm hearing?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
I feel like, okay, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant, so sorry, but I feel
okay,
like
go for it.
As a culture, we tend to, sorry, I think there's a little bit of a delay in the live stream, but that's okay. But I feel like we put women on this pedestal where it's like, oh, they're so much more spiritually in tune and able to discern like spiritual things over men, and men are just kind of like these knuckle dragging like Neanderthals and don't really know how to like discern spiritual things,
right?
And so we tend to overrepresent like the influence mothers have on their children and on society. And maybe I'm just being a little cynical, but that's what I felt most of my upbringing in the church and in my, not so much in my ward currently. I have a really good ward, but like my previous wards, it's been kind of like that environment. And
totally.
Yeah. Anyway, so
okay, so
not
you're saying
too much, but
yeah, like so that brings up a good question. So the question is that from our culture as a church, or do you think that's just like the culture of being raised in the United States, where every single commercial that came on TV, it showed like, hey, moms, you're on top of it. You're great. You're handling everything. And then it pans over to dad, and he's like struggling to even like zip up his pants in the morning. He's like, is it like that? Is that what we're talking about? Like, man, have we just as society been giving men the boot for so long that you think that's kind of bled over into the church culture a little bit too?
I think some of it is the general culture that's leaching into church culture and influencing it. But I don't know. I mean, I've heard it spoken over the pulpit multiple times in conference, in my local ward, where women are just like these superior spiritual beings that are so much more able to receive like revelation and whatnot, and men just aren't so much. So I really don't know, to be totally frank.
Well, I think there is some scriptural backing to that. They always say like if women are corrupted in a society, like they are like the final gate. Like they're the gatekeepers of society. Once women are corrupted, the society is left to divine judgment at that point. So I mean, I think from a scriptural standpoint, I understand, but I understand what you're getting at as well. When we kind of just, I don't think it's intentional. Is what I've seen. I think more times than not, it reminds me of like almost every single zone conference that we had on the mission, where the mission president would get up and he's like, sisters, we are just so happy that you're with us, and we just love you, and we are just so grateful for your sacrifice. And then they turn to the brothers and, brethren, quit looking at porn, okay? Just cut it out and shape up. You know better than that. Get out there and stop crying, So, I mean, I felt that the most in, and maybe that was just my mission, but anyone, David looks like he's smiling ear to ear over there. David, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, well, I actually have a question for Sam. What's your rationale for no gift? I feel like that's one of the strongest ways
Ooh.
that you can show love to all womanhood on Mother's Day. Like, why no rose for everybody, including the 18-year-old not married?
Yeah, so we didn't do it last year, and what we found is the complaint actually was that the pinwheels that we got them, some of them were too spicy. So that was the only complaint we got. Other than that, they were like, "This is a great. You guys did great." And so I'm trying to shift away from doing stuff like kind of giving stuff. I feel like it's one of those things where you give the mother a rose. What happens to it? It goes back, and it's like it's a nice gesture, but then it kind of just dies out, And so the memories that are made. So along with that, so the thought process behind it, and the way I've kind of been liking to. The way I like to shape the way I do activities and events is minimal amount of planning. So I cut down on like the committees, the meeting time, and all that stuff, because at the end of the day, like the decorations on the table, like that stuff doesn't matter, right? It's like the bonding, the one-on-one that the women have with each other is ultimately like.
Well, of course, you're not going after the centerpieces? The centerpieces? Are you kidding me? You can't have an activity without a centerpiece. So,
that being said, when I was picking up the pinwheels today from Sam's Club, I did look at some flowers and I was like, man, I could do a centerpiece and that would look really cool. But no, I just keep it simple, right? Keep it simple.
Okay.
I see.
So, I respect that.
Just to interject.
Go ahead.
The rose thing gives off like serious bachelor vibes. Like it just, that one always caught me as really funny, to give every woman a rose on Mother's Day. Like they all got picked by the bachelor, Maybe that's a cultural thing that I'm totally off in left field about. But yeah, that one always bothered me. I don't know. Maybe you're good with the pinwheels, Maybe we should do that in our ward.
I like the pinwheels.
Yeah. I think you're onto something. So
I think 1 year you take the beating. 1 year you take the beating of not doing it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the norm. So the next year you don't do it again, but you up maybe another aspect, like, oh well, last year you had pinwheels, this year you have pinwheels and cookies.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah. I mean, there's one way to look at it. From the way that I've always seen it is just from a leadership perspective. I've never really contemplated it until I got called into like an Elders Quorum presidency or a bishopric. And I began to understand what a absolute headache it is, because you're going to have people in ward council, out of ward council, all over the local ward. It seems like wherever I've gone, that will get offended and will let you know, like, hey, I got offended, no matter what you do. Like there is just, I have not found a win-win solution on this. It's always like, to put it in Utah, it's a danged if you do, danged if you don't. Okay. Justin, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh man, I like it's a bold move, Sam, but I kind of like the no gift. Let's do a connection and be together and enjoy each other kind of thing. Our ward's fallen into the old school. Just I was at Costco too, buying all the fruit, so I know I bought too much fruit. Anytime you put me in charge of the food, it's like you get too much. So we're doing the fruit buffet and cookies, and it was not put on the Elders Quorum at all. I'm in the bishopric, and the bishopric did the whole darn thing. I've been complaining about it all week. So, but it's
your Elders Quorum president.
It's great though, right? So I like that, Sam. I think that connection. I mean, that's what we're talking about in these episodes, right? Is like bringing the importance of bringing the Elders Quorum together and having connections and having a strong vibe there, and that's exactly what you're accomplishing there without a gift. So it takes the opportunity to be offended way down. Other than what, there's no gift. My wife is one that hates flowers too. We established that early on in our marriage. She's like, you spend money on a flower that's going to be dead in 3 or 4 days. So, I'd rather. She's very practical, right? Like, should have just got me a gift card instead of $50 worth of roses that I'm throwing away 4 days later or whatever. So that's just her. So I know some ladies like flowers, and that's great. But my wife likes more, get me something practical here. So which I kind of like the let's just enjoy each other, and maybe there's a small gift, but make that connection and strengthen that group. Good on
Okay.
you.
No gift for, would that work for Father's Day too? Because I look forward to my dad's root beer all year.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
take that away, we buy it, right?
Not the dad's root beer. Yeah. Or
No, not the,
I
actually,
think
sometimes that's all we get. In fact, probably 25% of Father's Days that I've been in, like, there hasn't even been any recognition of fathers. There isn't any talks about fathers. The talks are just about general topics like repentance or the Holy Ghost or something. I'm like, oh, it's Father's Day, but at least I get my dad's root beer.
No
Right.
better
So I
topic.
actually like this idea. Actually, we could translate that to Father's Day as well, to have an activity where the fathers could kind of form those
Well,
memories.
to that point, my wife is in the Relief Society presidency. She got a text last year from the Relief Society president saying, "Hey, it looks like we have a couple cases of root beer left over from last year that we can use for this Father's Day. So we'll just tie ribbons on those." I'm like, what, a year old?
Yes.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's a new low. That was sad.
well,
So
I
it
think
must be like a cultural thing because I'm in North Carolina. I have not seen any root beer. I don't know what you guys are even talking about.
yeah, it's got to be a Western
somehow.
thing.
What's going on?
It's happened. It's happened in every ward I've been in. Every single ward, it's been dad's root beer.
Mhm.
So Sam, what do
100%
they do in North Carolina?
So I don't remember what they did last year. I think they had a program.
Sounds
perhaps.
par for the course. Yeah.
At the primary, I think might have sung some songs. And it was good. Yeah, I think we just did our normal lesson.
See, that's a must too. I think the primary singing, like we almost missed that last year for Mother's Day, and it was like, I mean, it was like DEFCON 4, mad scramble, like making sure that happened. None of us had. I guess we just assumed it, and nobody had really checked with the primary, and we were like scrambling because the moms were like, "I came to hear the primary sing," you know, and I'm
Right.
like, "That is you got to check that box." I feel like even more important than whatever the gift is, whatever you.
You have to
Switch
make
those
sure
little kids up there and let them
kids
sing
are
a Mother's
singing.
Day song, or you are in the doghouse. I mean, we were in full panic mode trying to throw it together the last second, and I guess our bad as a bishopric was just the assumption that was going to happen. I just figured they'd been working on it for 6 months in the primary.
So did you have to coach the primary then? Like, did they not know that they were singing that day?
No, I was like, I know you have this song in your back pocket. We've got to have this. So and some of the
Give me
moms were
jazz
like,
hands. Come on. Where are those
This is-
spirit fingers?
Why we come? This is why we come to the meeting.
Send your counselor in there. to
Yeah.
Yeah, throw 'em
Run
in
music.
there.
Nice.
So
Okay.
regarding talks, that's another thought. Is last year in my ward, there was a woman that gave a talk, and she either had 1 or 2 kids, or she was sort of 75 plus years old. But she might have had 1 or 2 kids of her own. But her whole talk was about how she was a mother in different ways, and so it wasn't very overt and wasn't like, "I'm going to tell you how great of a mother I was," but she was just telling her life story,
Yeah.
reflecting back. And I don't remember if she had her own kids, like I said, but she took in all these foster kids, and then she was talking about when she was a little kid growing up and her little sister, and teaching her about those kinds of things. And so if you're in the bishopric and you can find somebody like that in your ward that's truly gone above and beyond in motherhood, and even done motherhood sort of in non-conventional ways, that would be great to get them to talk, I think.
Okay. That's awesome. So
That's
Tanner,
really
let's
Dude,
start
I
getting
kinda
into
felt
some of
like
the
we needed to
comments.
stay away from asking mothers to talk.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
agree.
Hold on,
I agree.
Justin had a thought. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. So
I
we
just
don't
said
want to
I
have
thought
mothers
we
to
were-
talk. Yeah.
I feel like you stay away from asking moms to talk on Mother's Day. Like, it's my day off. No, don't ask me to talk on my. And I think here's another one is if you're in a bishopric, like I'm just like cancel one Mother's Day. My wife was in. She was at ward council with me, young women's president, and we teased the bishop about this. So I think it's okay to say it, but he's had ward council on Mother's Day morning, and it was like a scramble to get the breakfast done and get him there. And it's like, just please do not ask those mothers to come into meetings on Mother's Day, for crying out loud. Like,
Look
it
at
was
that.
he wasn't
Fair
happy.
enough.
We still talk about it. So
Yeah.
Speaking of, I should probably ask if we're doing ward council tomorrow.
yeah, no. The answer is no. You're not.
No, not on Mother's Day. Yeah. Sorry, honey, I got to cook
Right.
these pancakes
What's
up
an
real
old-
quick. Gonna have to slap them in the microwave today because I got ward
Right.
council.
right? We both had it, so we both had to be there. So
Oh, nice.
she's just like, can't believe that word counts on Mother's Day. I was like, I know, you're in the doghouse, Bishop. I was like, as soon as I got the meeting, I was like, you're in trouble.
You're toast.
Ooh.
Yeah. What better way to celebrate Mother than a meeting, right? Like sitting down, trying to figure out what you were talking about last week. That's fantastic. All right, Tanner, why don't we get through some of those comments?
Okay, so shifting back to Elders Quorum. On this last video where Justin walked us through all these awesome tips and tricks that we can use to help engage the elders, we had some good comments. So I want to start off on this first one.
Wait, hold on. Real quick.
Cowboy Patriot.
Real quick. Do we have any chats that we need to catch up on?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay, yeah, let's get those.
Yeah, really quick. Deej said, I got here late. Have you discussed how annoying it is when they want you to act as though all women are mothers? To me, that is stolen valor.
Ooh.
So that's we touched on that a little bit now, but yeah, stolen valor. That's
words.
Ooh.
Man, that's a landmine. You just stepped on.
Coming in hot. I mean, I guess that is a hot take. That is a hot take. Yeah. So what do we think? Is that stolen valor? I cringed because I saw how deep Sam was cringing over there. Sam was like, ah, ooh. I don't know.
We like to think of the potential. We like to think of the potential.
Potential.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good way.
I have mixed feelings about that because like I know so many sisters in my ward who are infertile and trying so hard to get pregnant, and like we have this doctrine that everyone's going to be able to have children, at some point, whether in the millennium or in eternities. So yeah, that's a tough one for me. My empathetic side says that we should honor that, but yeah, so it's tough.
It is.
You just have to think fourth dimensionally. Like every woman's a mother.
Yeah.
When you step out of time. I get that. Yeah, we can go that route for sure.
I like that. Okay. Any other chats?
Deej also has to speak tomorrow for Mother's Day. So I think we should lean in, let him go and talk about stolen valor over the pulpit.
All right, tell us how it goes.
Come back and report to us and see how it went.
Yeah,
exactly.
That'll be a spicy one. Yeah.
Nursery Leaders Unite. Yeah, Nursery Leaders Unite told Deej to make sure you say something the women will find funny. It looks like our stream's a little choppy. That Timber mentioned that. I'm seeing it. Hayden, you gotta fix your bitrate somehow, or magically get better internet.
Okay.
Good luck. So
let me try and do that.
But the audio is coming through pretty good, so I just wouldn't even worry about it. It's an audio podcast at this point. So, and then so the Desert Primrose was talking about how the handing out of gifts is very uncomfortable when the youth gives them out. It's kind of like a weird vibe. And I get that. It's kind of weird when the young men are hunting women down, trying to give them flowers. They've got their list and they're trying to find all the women. So
like the Terminator.
But I think so far we are caught up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
So yeah, let's jump into some of these comments over here on the video. So at Cowboy Patriot says, if the men would rather check sports scores than feast on the word, that's a problem that teaching techniques can't solve. Problem is there's usually a famine of the word to begin with, but then no hunger for the word as well, but usually because the word is not offered to them. So is it a doctrine issue? Do they not have access to the word of God and they're just being lazy, or is it a teaching engagement issue?
Ooh,
that's the question.
Justin, why don't we have you go first?
I think that's actually yeah, thanks. That's a fair comment. I think if their body is there in Elders Quorum and they're just checking scores, then they're planning on being disengaged anyway, right? I think they feel like they're getting points for just showing up. So your body's at church. I'm here. I'm good. They're just going through the motions at that point. The things, I don't know that it's a doctrine issue. I think the things we talked about will get the class engaged. And I think as a teacher, what I was trying to say too is you should expect, if I'm teaching a lesson and preparing, and you're showed up for Elders Quorum, I expect you to engage, and that's fair.
Yeah.
If you're there, I expect you to engage in that lesson. So the things we talked about will get engagement. It will happen. If you're just there to check the scores, it's not a doctrine issue at that point. I think we've got bigger problems. They're just showing up to check a box and to have their body in the room there. But
so
I talked
so that
about,
brings up a really good
teacher,
question.
those are the folks that,
So the question is, should we just give up on those people and just say, you know what? You didn't prepare, so forget about you. We don't even want you anyway. Or do we try and engage them? Do we try our best to meet them where they're at and let's bring you in? Go for it.
Yeah, I think you try. And I think these are the people I was talking about in the lesson, where when you do ask people to have a discussion and you see them like moving over, on their own island here, right? They're trying not to be engaged or whatever. Those are the people, I think, as the teacher, I was talking about sidling up to folks. So you come up and you're like, see, you don't have a group. So what's up? I'm here to chat with you. And I think at that point, I think you're the teacher, so you should expect engagement, like I said. But I think if you can see he's there on his phone, disengaged, maybe just make some other connection. Man, like, how's your week? How's it going? Make a connection. We talked about greeting him at the door. That's just for connection's sake. And so if they're really that disengaged, that's the kind of guy I think you could make sure you're connecting with, or if you can tell they don't really want to talk to anyone or be called on, then when you're splitting up and asking for engagement, just go get to know that brother. I mean, talk about fishing, talk about whatever he's looking up on his phone, cars, basketball. Hey, you like basketball? Cool. What's going on? What team you're rooting for? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Oh, time's up and I'm back teaching the lesson again. Then I can get back to that guy and at least make a connection. I think there's no reason to shame them, or, you don't know what people are going through or why they're there, but as a teacher, you should expect engagement.
Okay. All right. So Timber, I saw a big reaction from you.
Yeah, so that's a really complicated issue, because to me, I feel like for the longest time, men's mental health has been like pushed off to the side. And what's that phrase that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care?
Right.
I think we've lacked true brotherly intimacy in our quorums for so long that we have this vision that we're just going to show up to Elders Quorum and it's just going to be this regurgitated conference talk, and there's not going to be much engagement, and it's not going to really apply to us and our individual needs. And so that's why people just go to the sports stats and whatnot. Maybe that's just my cynical mind, but I mean, I've felt that way in my quorum before, where I just go to my phone and start looking up things I'm interested in because it's not pertinent to me, as an individual.
Right.
And I know I'm disassociated from a lot of these quorum members, and I feel they don't really care about me as an individual. And so I show up because it's my duty and because, I have a testimony of the gospel, but it's not really pertinent to me. And so I think a lot of that changes when we change the culture, and that's a larger issue that needs to change rather than, man, I don't know. It's complicated. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just described a lot of elders quorums, and that's what we're trying to change. I think you start with that's where the greeting at the door is so powerful. It's just a hi. How are you? Who are you? Hi, welcome.
Yeah.
As a teacher's happy you're here. What's up? I back when it was home teaching, I used to home teach a guy, and we didn't leave a lesson. We would say we talked about fishing. We talked about all the things he liked that I liked that we had in common for no joke a year. And I just got to be friends with the guy before we even talked about church or anything. And he if I had started out with the spiritual message and whatever, I'd have been uninvited to that guy's house. So
The walls up are instantly, like,
Yep.
they're instantly up,
Yep.
right?
we
Yeah.
spent a year getting to know each other, and eventually called him to be in the young men with me, and it turned out to be great friends, and he, was back kind of active again, but it was slow, long burn, making little connections along the way.
Yeah.
Start meet them where they're at.
So
Meet 'em where they're at.
It's
Exactly.
if I understand correctly, it's more of a cultural issue. And I mean, and that's why we put it into this cultural call
Yes.
out, is because I believe that it's this trained habit. Everyone has just been falling back onto what Timber was talking about, this trained habit of really low expectations for the meeting, of like, I'm not going to engage, I'm not going to do any of that. So I don't know that it's necessarily on the quorum as much as I would say this is a cultural weed that has grown and that is choking people out right now. And that's why I would say be so careful with who you call to teach. You have to be super careful with that because of where men are right now. We live in the days in Doctrine and Covenants where men's hearts are failing them, and they should have just replaced that with the Elders Quorum's hearts are failing them. And it's like, so you have to be so careful with who you call to teach, because those very people are going to be the ones that could be like the little defibrillators that just kind of shock these guys back into activity, that shock them awake a little bit and say, all right, you matter, we are going to engage you. We're going to talk about the gospel again. We're going to try and get some of that fire back so that you can be a better husband, a better father, and to make you realize you've got brothers here that you can lean on as well. Anyone else have a comment there? Sam, I saw you a little smile go up. Why don't you go ahead?
So there's a couple things I was thinking about. When you guys were mentioning that, and one of those was, so in my quorum, I called 2 Elders Quorum instructors, or teachers, and the reason why I did that is because before I was Elders Quorum president, I was a counselor, but shortly before that, I was a Elders Quorum instructor. But it was just me, and one thing I noticed about that is I didn't actually have the ability to counsel with anybody over the lesson throughout those weeks, right?
Yeah.
And so the way I wanted to structure mine is I called an elder and a high priest, and it's on them. I gave them the leeway to plan their lessons and who was going to be teaching, and I gave them the counsel of, hey, if this topic based off of the conference talk is something that you're more passionate about, then you take the lead that week.
Yeah.
But when you guys were speaking, I was like, how often do I counsel with the instructors? Because is that a Sunday school president gig, or is that an Elders Quorum president gig where I should be counseling with them? And when I counsel with them, because I do PPIs, that could be a good time to be like, hey, perhaps when we're giving the lessons, we're focusing on, brother so-and-so and brother so-and-so. Perhaps we give them a little bit of extra attention. And that might be a soft pivot. That might be he's over in this group of individuals at these round tables, I might add. And perhaps I direct my attention to that table, and then I direct my attention to that individual in particular, so I don't catch them off guard, right?
Right.
But like that counsel with the instructors, I think is good, because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, we counsel in counsels, right, for results. And if we're looking for a particular thing, and they're praying and seeking inspiration for their calling, then I think it's only fair that we take it as seriously with them as we do with our Elders Quorum presidency or
I
the
like
Ward
that.
Council.
Yeah, no, and I would say for now, don't lean on the Sunday school president for now, just because I feel like this video has really uncovered another cultural call out, which is I feel like Sunday school and Sunday school presidencies have kind of become like this really kind of blind spot area where there's not a whole lot happening. It's kind of devolved into just like passing the roles out and holding teacher council meetings. And the last teacher council meeting I went to, we were all just kind of in a circle, and the Sunday school presidency representative was just like, so what do you guys want to talk about today? And then we just sat there in silence for about 20 minutes. And then some sister was like, well, Come Follow Me was pretty good this week. And he was like, wasn't it? Powerful. all right, can I have a closing prayer? You know,
Powerful.
and that was it, you know, and I was just like, oh man, yeah. So, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms in itself. I think we have to start with the Elders Quorum, keep it as much control as you can over those instructors, because I don't know, we'll work on the Sunday school, but I think if we could start at the Elders Quorum, I'd say start there. David, it looks like you want to say something. Go for it.
I'm going to say one more
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
Is
go
that
for it,
okay?
Justin. Yeah.
Just in the, I mean, the stuff we talked about in that episode, I told you it's going to be so different enough that people, I even said in the episode, I said, they're going to think something's wrong almost. It's that shocking. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be like, what is he want? He wants us to talk to each other? What, is he crazy? You know, or greeting us at the door? What? I've never seen this before. Like, this is different stuff. Like the topic was, as the teacher, if you want them engaged in your lesson, these things are going to work, but they're going to be different and they're going to be a little uncomfortable. And as a teacher, I love engagement. I'm leading a discussion, so I'm totally okay with that. So,
Yeah.
but you're right. You got to pick the right teachers that are down to try this kind of stuff. And even when you do the think, pair, share thing, I've been in think, pair, share groups where you don't share. You don't have to. You know, you talked about that. So it's like if you meet them where they're at, they might. When you say, "Hey, I want you to talk to the person you're sitting next to," that other partner might be totally comfortable just sitting there and listening. And I've seen that happen a lot. And that's okay too. That's still, they're thinking.
Yeah.
That's engagement. One partner might be a little more domineering and they'll talk and eventually, you know, the person, if they choose to, they'll get used to that and they'll engage if they want to. But sometimes the think, pair, shared, that's just kind of a one-sided share and that's okay too. So
Totally. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, like, it's going to shock elders. There was one comment about a guy who was like, I set up the round tables and was so disappointed the first week. I walked in there, the brethren had literally put the tables away and rearranged the chairs back into rows. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think it was intentional.
what's wrong here?
No, honestly,
Yeah.
I think it shocked them so much. I think they were like, oh, there must have been some kind of activity last night. It's our job to put away the tables because that is the main job of the Elders Quorum is to put away tables and chairs. And so they're like, oh, we got to put the tables away. So I think I give them another chance. Don't give up on them yet. Give them another chance. And then just probably send out an email, you know, and maybe have a couple guys, a couple high priests posted around the door saying like, hey, we're trying something new, you know. Okay. Any other comments that we want to touch down on, Tanner?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, this one falls into that pretty well. So this is from @Helaman's Army. It says, as an EQ teacher, I can say that getting the men to actually talk is ridiculously difficult. Sometimes it's like I'm speaking a different language or even talking to myself. Every time I've tried to make the lessons more exciting, which would include supplemental context or information, it's generally met with contempt. Being an EQ teacher has been one of the more difficult callings I've had. It goes on for a little bit there, but that's the general vibe. It's like, yeah, I actually have felt for where you try something new and you can feel the like frustration from the group. Like they don't want to do it. They just want to sit there, you know? Yeah. Like Justin was saying, you need a teacher who's willing to poke that bear. Like, get up, go on, let's get going, you know, kind of get out of that rut because it takes practice, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would also say it's a powerful thing as a teacher is take a minute and reflect on what's working and keep that in the holster. And if it didn't take real well, get rid of it. Teachers do this all the time. I work with teachers day in and day out here. And I'm at the end of the year right now, we're about to wrap up our school year and I'm meeting with our teachers and I'm asking them, first question I ask them is what went well this year? What are you going to keep? And what was terrible and what are you going to get rid of? Right. And then what are you going to do different for next year? And, you know, that's a good thing to, as a teacher, to sit down. That's a powerful moment to sit down and better yet, the Elders Quorum teachers, there's 2 or 3 of them, get them together, like carve out some time where they can be together. What's working for you? What are you keeping? Okay, this worked. This did not work. This did not go well. If it doesn't go well, forget it. Like, don't do it again, right? Like,
yeah.
So just reflect and think about the things that worked and be willing to keep some things and be willing to drop some things.
Okay. Here's one. This is from at If This Then That. It says, EQ lessons have grown so boring and intellectually exhausting that when you hear people talk about it and really bring up valid points, I have to stop watching after 15 minutes. The guidelines are the elephant in the room. Guidelines dramatically limit any sensitive topic. Anything worth my attention is potentially sensitive. If grown men can't find a forum to discuss these topics, they will spend hours listening to Mormon stories and be spoon-fed John DeLynn propaganda instead. What do we have to say about that? Ooh, Timber. Big reaction there. Let's go.
Sorry, let me unmute myself.
Yeah.
I don't know really where to start with this other than like if members can't come to their quorum or Relief Society with sensitive questions, where else are they going to go? And most of the time, from my experience, it's Mormon stories. It's a more
Reddit.
Progressive,
Reddit,
Reddit, ex-Mormon Reddit, or something else. We need to stop pushing off addressing sensitive issues, whether it's women in priesthood or the priesthood ban for blacks or the LGBT issue. They need a safe place for us to discuss those issues. And what's a safer place than in our quorums?
Yeah.
And if we're not willing to discuss that in the church, where it's a dedicated space where the Spirit is supposed to reside, if we're not allowed to discuss it there, where are they going to go? I mean, ideally, we should be discussing these issues with our children and our families.
Yeah.
But let's be frank, a lot of the time that's not happening. I know it takes a lot of grace and it takes the Spirit to be able to manage really sensitive discussions like that in a quorum setting.
Yeah.
But we should be able to have those discussions without like, oh, this is getting off topic, let's just shut it down. No. Some people need to have that discussion, and they need to have it there now with their brothers. And we should be able to do that. So anyway, I don't know how else to say that, but
I really like that approach. David, you have been uncharacteristically stoic tonight. Why don't you go ahead? Give us your thoughts if you have any.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Partially it's having some audio problems. I can't hear Tanner, but I can hear everyone else. So
okay, I got
you. In response to that, this is something that I have thought about a lot. I don't know if I have an answer. But on the one hand, we have the handbook, which tells Elders Quorum presidencies to use one or more talks as the basis for the teachers, right? And frankly, in one or more general conference talks, you're not going to be touching these topics very much, maybe tangentially, but not really to the depth that you might want to go on a more of a private level, right? Because that was general conference. That's the entire millions and millions of people of church. Yeah. But you're in a much more intimate group, and you're able to go deeper in more detail and more directions. So if you're using this as your model, the general conference talk, and staying on that level, you never get down to this level. So partially it's a handbook problem or an interpretation of the handbook problem. I'm not in the Elders Quorum presidency, but when I teach, I'm not a teacher either, but I substitute sometimes. And when I teach, I actually, don't know if I should say this, but I largely disregard that the handbook where it says use one or more talks. I pick a talk I pick a talk or usually one talk that is sort of connected to what I'm talking about, and we read a line from it or something, and I may return to it if there's interest. But for the most part, then for the remainder of the lesson, I use whatever the Spirit has told me that I need to be talking about with these men. So there's me, a heretic, doing this thing. But do we have to
you're a rogue.
Be a heretic to teach good Elders Quorum lessons? I don't know. I really struggle with the times when the Elders Quorum teacher gets up there and they're reading from the talk, and then they're getting other people to read from the talk, and then we're discussing the talk, and I'm like, the talk is already really good.
Yeah.
So
It's already been
How are
given.
we going to do better than that? And it's not to say, it's not to say that
We could
can't
watch
get
it again
right
if we
knowledge
want
from it.
to.
We can. Right. We want, although, to be fair, most men in the Elders Quorum wouldn't be watching that talk again. So it is a good refresher. But you
Yeah.
kind of have to balance that, the handbook and the letter of the law, with the needs of the quorum and what you're actually needing to teach, right? And so that's how I balance it, is I mostly disregard the handbook. Maybe I've swung too far in the other direction.
Okay.
But I also think that that's the crux of the matter, is because we're instructed to teach from the talks, and because the talks are from general conference and are supposed to be intelligible by anyone in the church, all different cultures and languages and people and levels of spirituality. And then we take that, and that's exactly what we're teaching in Elders Quorum. So I think it kind
I
of needs
see.
to start there. Is maybe I'm saying heretical things, but we need to think more broadly outside of the talk we're teaching, and we need to think about our Elders Quorum, not the talk.
So are you saying that they have given us so much slack in the handbook by saying, use one or more and find a topic? They've given us so much slack that we're hanging ourselves on it. Is that what you're saying?
I guess so.
Like we're getting stuck. We're stuck to the one talk, one lesson. Okay, Tanner, are there any chats we need to catch up on?
Yeah, Nursery Leaders Unite says, how about multiple teachers, like everyone takes a turn approach? I think that's a good idea in Elders Quorum. There's no better way to generate empathy for the teachers than to make everyone try it. That'll keep everyone on their toes. So I think that'd be great.
Well, and there are a couple of brethren in the ward that would give some really spicy lessons. It would give great lessons, like David over there. Like, just be a rogue and completely go off the rails of the handbook, and maybe pull a talk from like Skousen or something like that. Actually. Yeah.
Oh,
100%.
That's awesome.
So I think as an Elders Quorum, if you're in the position to be a president, like that's one of the best things you could possibly do, is keep guys on a kind of a constant rotation of callings. Like, don't give them some time to figure it out, like figure out the calling, but like keep them rotating so that more guys get the opportunity to teach, more guys get the opportunity to be the service coordinator, all within the Elders Quorum. So you're calling these guys. So you're not having to wait on slack of like, all right, well, now the bishopric has to set them apart and they got all this stuff going on. It's a simple, hey, bishop, we have this name. Is he good? Yes. Okay. We're going to go ahead and call him and set him apart. Well, we're going to call him and sustain him in quorum. But like, it's that simple, right? And it's the same thing with the little bit more difficulty with the Elders Quorum presidencies with the counselors, but same idea, right? Like Elders Quorum president, a little bit harder to replace timeline wise with the stake president. But hey, after a year, maybe you call another counselor, and give another person an opportunity to come in and experience what it's like to have to, wrangle in like 30 Muldoons every week. So
yeah. I love that. Awesome. Any other chats that we want to catch up on?
That's awesome. Yeah, so I think we're all caught up on the live chats. Deej has been commenting a couple awesome things there about liking half circle mode and working in groups. I think that's awesome.
Okay. So I got one more comment if we're ready for it.
There's one comment. Oh, yeah, you go for it.
I'll go for it. This is from Aceback Blaze 3583. Great name. He says, this is a prime example of what Richard Rohr sees. He's talking about the Elders Quorum complaint video, the cultural call-out video. This is a prime example of what Richard Rohr sees, who apparently is a priest. He says, Mormons do the first half of life better than anyone else, and you almost have no second half of life. Something has to change. Good start, fellas. Yeah. So I think he's actually onto something there. Like, if you think about the amount of attention and focus we give youth in these programs, where they get the amount of so you've got like FSY, you've got high adventure camps, you've got like all of these different little sub programs. There are like stake dances, there are meetings that are happening almost every other week, and then they get onto a mission. We get them onto missions, and we're great at that. We get them into the temple. We're great at getting temple marriages, and then I feel like after the temple marriage, it's just hands off. And I feel like it's just kind of poof into the unknown. You know, everyone just gets blown out and it's just like, all right, sink or swim. And I feel like the Elders Quorum could be a safety net.
Yeah.
I think that was the vision of the Elders Quorum, is like, all right, here you go. Now let's get you into the quorum. Let's get you engaged. Let's get you involved. And let's tackle the second half of life, which is the most difficult half of life, by the way, together and connected. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, to that point, just real quick, I think we have a huge cultural misunderstanding of what endure to the end means. And that has like set everyone off on a trajectory that's just a nightmare, right? Like you get married in the temple and then you're just supposed to sit like on a bus. Like you're on the bus to heaven, sit down, shut up, and just be patient until you die and then you can go to heaven. Like that's the vibe that I get from a lot of people. And there's no like mental work on like, you still need to progress. You still need to grow. It's like, all right, you checked all the boxes. Now just wait for the second coming.
Right.
That's and I hate
here's
that so
a pain
much.
stick.
So.
If you have any complaints, just chomp down on this pain stick and just shut up and keep going for the rest of your life, you know, and that's it.
Yeah. It's terrible, you know, and that's obviously not what endure to the end should mean, but that's what we've made it mean in the culture of the church, and it's really annoying.
So what do you think the interpretation should look like? What is the cultural mindset? And this is we'll get this in another cultural call out. What is the cultural mindset that we should be approaching endure to the end with? I know David's a guy deep in scripture and well studied. David, why don't you lead us out on this one?
I missed all of what Tanner said, sorry, but I figured out why I couldn't hear him right at the end. So
we're talking about the phrase of endure to the end.
Can you give me some context?
Yeah, so endure to the end, how we as a culture have interpreted it as just kind of sitting on the bus and just waiting it out for the rest of the life, not necessarily progressing spiritually. But I think as a culture, it's just like after you're married in the temple, you just sit down and you shut up and you just go until the bus drops you off in your celestial kingdom.
Right. And the original comment that you shared earlier was that Latter-day Saints do the beginning of life really well and the second half of life not very well. Does anyone else do it better, I guess? Does anyone else endure to the end better? Do the Protestants or the Catholics or the atheists do it better? I actually think maybe no, right? It's just because our first half of our life is so good and so elevated in Latter-day Saint Church. Second half of the life is just normal, and we're not actually kind of used to that.
Yeah.
So, but I guess endure to the end.
Yeah.
Look at that.
What's that? Sorry?
It's a way to clap back. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're nailing the whole life. Come on.
David doesn't take crap from nobody.
Yeah. I guess endure to the end, though, has a lot of meanings, and of course in the scriptures it's often sort of code for for making it to the celestial kingdom, whereas that code meaning doesn't really help us in the next week or month as much per se, if we think about it as enduring through something difficult and painful, right?
Sure.
So, but there's other meanings of endure, right? So in Psalms, the Lord shall endure forever. And does that mean that the Lord is like doing these hard things and painful, like feeling the pain? No, of course. It means that he is enduring forever. He is continuing to be awesome. So I don't know. There's also times in Job, but I would have to go to the. Yeah. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
100%.
Okay, Tanner, you said you had one more comment. I think we're getting close to the hour, so why don't you give us the last comment? We'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, this one kind of sums everything up for us, guys. This comment says, fake religion started by aliens to divide humanity. So there you go. It's all solved. It's the aliens. They got us.
Aliens.
We can all just admit it. Egg on our face.
Every time.
You get your Sundays back now, guys.
There you go.
Darn aliens again.
Yeah, they're always getting
That's
me.
what my brother believes.
I mean, not wrong on the extraterrestrials, right? Technically
Yeah.
true.
Technically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we have to give it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the final thing we wanted to talk about is get you guys' take on our poll about having singing time in Elders Quorum and Relief Society. And I think that there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of nodding and shaking heads there. So
We don't got enough time for singing.
you don't think they
really
sing
enough time
more?
for counseling.
Yeah, that's true. I think we need more songs.
Can I just say some of my most spiritual, revelatory experiences have been through singing hymns. I know when I was when I was a convert, or I guess what's the term? Someone who's an investigator.
Yeah.
Learning the gospel.
A friend.
I went to conference, and I remember, a friend. Yeah, that's the new term, right? I went to the conference center, and we were singing in unison in the conference center, and it was powerful. That was one of the spiritual experiences I will never forget in my life. And I think singing together with your brothers is amazing. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just how I receive revelation. But for me, that helps me feel more unified and fulfilled than a lot of other things. So I don't know. I think
like
there's
that.
something to that. So
Yeah, and
All
on
right.
the one hand, it's good. I think partially because it sort of shakes everyone up. Like if you're an Elders Quorum teacher and you're like, okay, we're all going to sing these 3 songs now, and we're all going to put it in harmony and everything. Then everyone's like, wait, what? And they sit up and listen. They're not checking their scores on their phones. On the other hand, it is a bit polarizing. Like in terms of there are some elders that just love singing and love music, and they'll be all over it and it'd be like feeling the spirit. And other elders are like, what is going on? Or I'm not into this. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's other perhaps better ways to unify the quorum rather than have a primary singing time.
I like that. Justin, what are your thoughts?
I'm into just full disruption there, so that's good. You know, like, bring it on. Like, we're gonna sing. They're really gonna be like, "What is happening here?" So no, I agree with what Timber said, where it's like, especially sacrament meetings. Some of the best are where they're just music. Music is gonna reach people that nothing else can. So I think if it's appropriate. I could see that being a good start to some change too. Like if maybe they're not ready for the round tables yet, or that's a great step forward, because music has a special people resonate with music. Everyone resonates in some powerful way with music, and it's gonna reach people that nothing else can. So I love it. I think it's good to do it. I think that is something that should happen more in an Elders Quorum.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Can I just say, I think the core. I just wanted to say, I think the core of what we're getting to right here, just shaking things up, is as men. I don't know if it's just in our culture or not. We're afraid of emotional intimacy. And I think that goes down to having intimate conversations with another brother, or singing, or whatever. I think that's why we struggle with it a lot, is because that's the core of the issue. We struggle with having that emotional intimacy. And so we need to have activities that help us to foster that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something.
That's just what I see.
I remember reading in Band of Brothers, like they would sing all the time, like running up and down Currahee, like they were just constantly singing as troops, you know, and they would like, I mean, they weren't the kind of songs that you'd be singing in Elders Quorum, but they were singing, you know, and as like a method to help them get through the pain and take their mind off of the pain for a little bit. But that's not the reason why I like the idea of singing in Elders Quorum. The reason why I like the idea of singing in Elders Quorum, it goes back to the conversation we were having with Justin, is I think it makes it that much more like the nursery. And I think the nursery has the perfect format for men.
Yeah. They have snacks, you mean, or what specifically?
I think it's the snacks.
No, that's 100%.
It's songs,
true. So
it's activities.
Even
Go for
in
it.
School, snacks.
Yeah. Like I work at a high school, and honestly, there's more of a push with teachers to bring the high school classroom to try to make it more like your kindergarten classroom. It's the same. We're talking about making Elders Quorum more like nursery and joking about it, but it's not. You're not off with that. Like in high school, instead of just rows of desks, it's like, hey, can we do some centers and group things up here and get these kids up and moving a little bit? Like, I don't know how or when we got away from that, because it works. It's good. So yeah, like seriously, more like nursery isn't too far off.
Yeah.
With that. And singing is a powerful thing. I think it's a great thing to do and to start, and it should happen more in that Elders Quorum for sure. I think you're onto something cool there.
Take that, Sam. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Just kidding. You can. It's all right. I can see how it could fail too.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of time.
Yeah.
There isn't. No.
So it'd have to be focused on singing. But I love music. I'm a tabernacle choir only. Like that.
Ooh,
I know.
wow.
I know. Hot take.
That's
I don't
pretty.
listen to any music. All the music I listen to on my way from home to school, it's about a 45-minute drive. Is if I'm listening to music, it's tabernacle choir.
Wow.
And it's
Wow,
only the
that's
good
awesome.
stuff too. It's only the good stuff, right? None of
only
the
the
bad
good
hymns.
Wow.
None of the bad
Wait.
hymns.
Those trashy hymns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there
Not the
bad
ones that make you
hymns?
sing in sacrament. Not the ones that make you sing in sacrament. Keep it.
That's
Look at that.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Well, hopefully the video issues this time haven't made it too terrible to watch, and I think we'll wrap up the discussion there. It's been great having you gentlemen on. We have Justin Keate, Sword of Laban, which is David over there. We've got Timber Harward. We've also got Sam at Through the Mist, and my brother Tanner Holm. I'm Hayden Holm, and this is Salty Saints. We'll see you next time.